This week, we visit an open house on fan service.
Because why buy when you can rent your anime girlfriends?
Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Garrett.
And we watch anime. Garrett, you've been working really hard as a noob. I've been proud of all of the culture you've consumed, names you've learned, and scores of anime music and things that you have to dole out over the weeks. That's why this week I wanted to reward you with an anime palate cleanser and almost a sherbet, to clean the palate, to get you ready for more episodes. This week, we've chose a show that seems like everything you've noticed in ecchi, but it has a little bit more charm and reality than meets the eye. That's right, this week we tackle the ecchi, slice of life, romantic comedy, Kanojo Okarimasu, also known in English as Rent a Girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But before we begin, Garrett, what are new fans going to be expecting from this show?
Imagine if the app Tinder married OnlyFans, and it's somewhere in between there.
Yes, and it's like, but like maybe there might be a kissus or there might be a hand-holding. It's like the most PG version of Tinder and
Yes.
like a G version of Grindr. I don't know. So, so once again, this week we are talking about the show Rent a Girlfriend. Seems pretty face value in the name. The manga came out in 2020 and the anime came out in 2020. So this show is
quick.
a 2020 exclusive, brand new
release.
like that kind of stuff. So, and I can see why they quickly jumped on this property. It's like easy to get out. It's easy to palate. It doesn't require like a lot of push. So,
Right.
So one thing I could say about this show is that it's what I would call a realistic harem. So basically what that means is like, it's if a guy was surrounded by all these women that might have interest in them, for the most part, 75% of their interactions are them disgusted by the guy more than they are liking him. So
In that respect, it's absolutely realistic.
right, because what we're going to find out over this time is that the main character, the MC of the show is not your classic harem trope main character in that everything he does is right. Everything he does is something to admire. He's a plain vanilla, ice cream cone with, cardboard sprinkles on top. But like he'll sometimes save the day and have the right words said just at the right time so the girl can blush. It's like it kind of subverts that. So I kind of liked it.
Right.
The etchiness is a little mild, so that's good. There's no panty shots or anything like that, but there is like random shots in which like actual sex is being shown, albeit censored.
Mm-hmm.
So Garrett, what is some initial thoughts you have of the show before we get into more of it? What did you think of the show?
I actually thought for what it was, and I from the title Rent a Girlfriend, I thought, all right, we're going full on ecchi here. This show's going to be absolutely terrible.
That's what I thought so too.
The relationships between the characters were far more realistic, other than the lead and his grandma. But again, I don't know a lot about Japanese culture. That was a weird section of it.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the relationship amongst the friend group in the show, I was like, this is college students or high school students. It is in college, but I'm like, a girl would do that. A best friend would do that. That does seem like something that would happen. So it was actually far more realistic than I anticipated it to be.
Right, and I think that's the kind of the point that I liked out of it. And because this is my first time seeing it, so this is a fresh property. As I told you, it just came out last year, technically a couple months ago, essentially. But we're not in high school, Garrett. I think that's the first thing to talk to you about. We're out of high school.
College.
We're in college now, baby. This is Saved by the Bell, the New Year's, or whatever the name of that show was. And so what you'll know about is that people drink. Sex is understood, so it's not like a bunch of like 16-year-olds saying like, "Oh, I wonder what her legs feel like," or it's guys having a better understanding of like what's
right.
sex.
And I really enjoyed certain scenes. Like there's a scene where they're like, "Hey, come for a drink," and they go to a bar and they have the private room with the sliding door and they're drinking beers and they're ordering food, and the menus are like the absurd menus that I've seen when I'm in Asia, where if there's not a photo of the dish, it's a rarity, And so I thought it's kind of cool.
And the relationships are less childish, which I like. Like they're complex. They go up, they go down. You like someone 1 minute and then you don't like them the other minute. Like it's not like what you normally get in a harem, which is like I love this man, but other women love him too, and I'm not mad at him for that fact. Like I hate all the other women for that is what you normally get out of a harem, and this one was just like I could diss on this guy a little bit because our main character is no one to look up to.
No,
Not at all.
He's actually quite terrible.
Yes, but before we get into the main crux of the show, I think what's really interesting about this show, and I always want to figure out how to introduce this topic to you, is the idea of the genre known as slice of life anime.
Okay.
And that's what this would kind of fall into. I know you probably heard me say slice of life all the time. And so I wanted to clarify what that is. So this is going to be a little bit of an explainer as well. So slice of life anime is actually really nice. I like them. They're a good change of pace. The general idea is that the anime are going to be about real world people in real life situations. There's no swords. There's no magic. There's no unrealistic ideas. Sometimes they'll throw in a magic thing. I take that back. Like there's one called Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches, in which everything's real save for like only 7 people have powers for no explainable reason. So, but other than that, it's not really centered on that. It's centered on it's more of a foil to talk about the realistic expectations. They're also generally less dynamic and are more about character development. So the point of the story is not about I'm going to avenge this person or I'm trying to be the pirate king. It's how does this person grow? How do they elevate each other? What are some things that they gain from their interactions with each other? They're usually low risk, low stress. So they're good reads. And that's why I said for us, we've been doing Bleach and all these other shows. It's get a little bit of palate cleanser. So hopefully this, for all of you out there, it's a nice distraction. But tell us what the show is generally about. Right. What talk us through and maybe introduce us to our main character, Kazuya Kinoshita.
Kazuya Kinoshita. So we open up on Kazuya Kinoshita, and he has just been dumped by his girlfriend.
Poor guy.
Mami-san. Mami.
Oh, Mami.
Oh, Mami. And he is distraught. Yeah. And it becomes, look, I'm not trying to be machismo and say, men can't cry when they get broken up with. If you cared for someone, you absolutely should cry. Mm-hmm. But the difference is that he's pathetic.
Right.
He's in bed and he's weeping and he's crying over this girlfriend that he loved and was she was the love of my life. Well, it turns out they were dating for a month.
Yeah.
And she broke it off, and he's distraught and he doesn't know what to do. And then he opens his phone, and there's an app there, and it's called
Diamond.
And it's called Rent a Girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he starts looking through, and he decides that he needs some companionship. He needs to get out there, which is not the worst thing in the world. I imagine it's the most innocent version of what an escort could be.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Is someone to give you company.
Yeah.
And of course, like any guy who's ever had an adult screen in front of them on a computer and it says, local girls want to do you, that they're not going to look like their photo. And you see
Wait, you're telling me there is one in my town and she wants to meet me?
But
this girl seems to move wherever my computer goes too. You get the same girl. It's you can find me in this town. And the next picture, you can find me in the same town you are. I'm following you.
But he comes across this girl, Chizuru Mizuhara.
Right.
And he decides, I'm going to book it. Yep. I forget how much it cost, but
we'll go over the total prices. So let me tell you that I've done a line item full receipt on Kazuya's purchases over the course of 6 episodes.
Okay.
So don't you worry about it. We'll go over that in a second. Yeah.
So he decides to meet up with her, and they meet at a cafe, and she's beautiful. Mm-hmm. She looks just like the photo. It's as advertised, and she's sweet, and she's endearing, and she melts his pathetic little heart. And then they go to the aquarium, and she doesn't know anything about fish, and it turns out that he likes to hang out at aquariums. It's the thing that
he's a fish nerd. He loves everybody has their thing that they have a weird, almost spectrum disorder understanding of, and his is fish.
You don't know what that is? That's weird.
And he said a really weird one too. It was you know about the neon flathead,
the neon tentra.
It was something like that. I'm I didn't know that either, man. And I actually studied natural resources.
So they go on this date, and it's just going really well. She's making him feel like he's walking in clouds, which means she's doing her job as a rent-a-girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the date, she reaches down and she sort of caresses his hand and holds his hand, and then they interlock fingers, and he's just like, his heart is pounding out of his chest. He's all aflutter, and he has a great time. And so he goes home,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes back to the website, or he goes to a message board,
Mm-hmm.
and he starts seeing reviews. Hey, bro, she was awesome. I got way further than that. She held my hand at the end, too. And he starts to get this feeling welling up inside of him. He's getting what he would call angry, but it was embarrassment. Because he's feeling like she tricked him, but that's exactly what he paid her to do.
Right.
He paid her to trick him into feeling this way, to feel better.
Right.
So he leaves the only thing that he can think of, which is a spiteful 1-star review.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not enough. He feels angered by this. He feels that he's been screwed over.
He's got big incel energy, this guy.
It's totally misplaced.
100% misplaced.
And so he books another date with her. Because
But like not to date her, but to like yell at her. He's like, I'm gonna book this so I can yell at you.
Yeah. And so they go back to the diner, and she has her game face on, and she's like sweet to him, and he's making these really snide remarks. And like doesn't this make you feel empty to do this? Like, dude,
I bet you were real fun at strip clubs, my friend.
Yeah.
Like,
what's your problem? And then they go to the aquarium.
Yep.
And now keep in mind, this is a second date.
Yep.
Now they're looking in the aquarium, and she starts to point out like an eel. I think she points out like an eel coming out of the sand, and he's like, oh, she read a book just to come on this date? And I want to tell yes, because she's good at her job.
yes, because she's a professional, dude.
Right. So it starts building up in him, and he just starts yelling at her at the aquarium, and she's like, we got to get the hell out of here. And she grabs his wrist, and she runs down the street with him and pulls him around a corner and is like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why'd you give me a 1-star review? I knew you gave me a bad review. Why did you ask me back out? Blah, 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 blah.
And everything she's saying is 110% correct. Right. And he's feeling it.
Totally out of line.
Yeah, yeah.
And it probably would have ended right there. They probably would have finished their date. They would have carried on. Life would have happened. And then he gets a call, and am I skipping episodes?
No, you're in the right place. Yeah.
Then his grandma has collapsed, and he has to go to the hospital. But because she's an effing professional.
She is a pro. She's like, I have extra time. Anybody would be like, this guy insulted me. I don't care how much time he has left. I'm going home. But she's like, no, I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing.
Right. You paid for an X amount of hours?
Yep.
I'm coming with you to that hospital.
Yeah, yeah.
And she ends up meeting his grandma, who confuses her for his girlfriend. And like a fool, she plays along with it and admits to being the girlfriend. And what probably would have ended in an embarrassing, contentious situation finds Mizuhara and Kazuya entwined more than they ever thought they would be.
Right. And so here's the thing that will, just to go back on our main character, I think I put some notes down because I said he is a realistic harem male lead, right? Like he's a POS in my opinion. At no point do I like him. He's always saying things out of line. He's always out of line. His intentions are never good. He is kind of a coward. I'm not kind of. He
constantly makes the wrong decision.
Constantly makes the wrong decisions, and then always makes them worse. That's another thing.
Yeah.
He also jerks off a lot.
Well,
this man is a chronic masturbator.
There are tissues everywhere. And in fact, what do his friends keep asking him when they see him?
They're like, how many times did you jerk at this week? And he's like, 3 times.
Speaking of which, last week on our show, we had an intimate relationship with the Army.
Yeah.
And he was explaining to me today that in the Army, among the young enlisted and cadets, when you jack off, it's referred to as beating Navy because of all the semen. So you say, hey, how many times did you beat Navy today?
So yeah, and like I know, like in another episode, I mentioned how like we should not stigmatize male sexuality and what it means, but like this guy goes into like the sad part of masturbation, which I think is really bad. Like when you told him, like I think his inner strife of losing Mami, we understated how he was doing. Like he was like fluctuating between grief and beating himself multiple times, like a pirate ship, right? It's like, now I'm sad, now I'm whacking, now I'm sad, now I'm whacking. So like it's like consistently switching between those two things.
He's like trying to find old photos of her to whack it. Like,
and even so much so, like they want to make you seem like this man is such a virgin that is consistently masturbating, that the end theme of the show is literally the girls dancing behind him while he's shaking a soda can with his eyes squinting like this, and it's like the whole until finally like the last thing is like done and the soda can pops. So I don't know what we're trying to get with this show, but that's 110% what you get out of him. The second thing, Garrett, I think you mentioned it very well, is that Chizuru, in my mind, is the main character of this show because she's the hero in my mind. You know, she's 100% a professional. She, you know, it seems like she's going through school right now. She keeps her work and her personal life separate, and she wants to dedicate all of that to it. But there's a little bit of a foil, which I'll jump in and explain, is that he finds out that she goes to the same college as him, but she's kind of like the she's all vatification of herself. She's
oh my God, she has pigtails and glasses. She's a totally different person.
What a garbage person! Like it's that kind of thing. And so she's now Chizuru Ichinose in real life, and then Mizuhara when she's on dates. And she's really good at what she does. If anything, I would say it's not like Rent-A-Girlfriend's this like thing. It's like it shows you actually how good it can be as a real profession and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And how realistic and incel customers can be when they write reviews. It's like, how dare she? She just leads guys on. It's like
that sense of entitlement and like, but at the same time, like the Rent-A-Girlfriend concept. I mean, it's like it's one step away from prostitution. You know.
But and I'm gonna hold my progressive stance. I feel like there shouldn't be really an issue as long as with prostitution, even if there's two consenting adults and they want to have a transaction out of their relationship. I would say go for it. In this case, it's even like the PG version of that, so why not? It's just the men in her life tend to get a little bit too wild on her. But the grandma is a very specific person. Before we move on to more topics of this show, in that like it would not be enough this man is paying this woman to date him.
Right.
The foil of this show has everything to do with like dying wishes of old ladies who are just like thirsty for like young romance, you know, like they've read too many romance novels in their lives. Because this old lady, she's also a kind of a go-getter. Her husband died when she just had her firstborn son. Mm-hmm. And she took over the business by herself. So she's a small business owner, you know. And she's
the matriarch.
She's the matriarch. She makes this amazing business that's still succeeding, this great family, and her only wish before she hits the cold ground of the night is that her boyfriend, her youngest grandson, finds someone.
Right.
That's all she wants.
And so when she meets Mizuhara, like the second question out of her mouth is, "So have you guys banged yet?"
It's like she's so thirsty for that. Like and like I don't know. It's like and what's crazy is that like the only reason the show continues is really because of old people guilt. Like
because it just so happens that Mizuhara's grandmother is also
in the hospital
at this hospital and is friends with the matriarch Kinoshita.
And they just love it. They're just so thirsty for this idea of young romance and stuff like that they just want to like have the soaps happen in real life. In fact, her grandma, Kazuya's grandma, calls Chizuhara Hime the whole time. It says angel in the translation, but Hime means princess. So she's like this like every wish she has for her grandson has been like displayed onto this poor girl who he's being printed on, and you know it's wild. So So one thing that I wanted to put a pause on, and we can talk about, is because I wanted to give this a real, like 5 minutes to talk about, is the real world business of rental people in Japan. So I don't know if you know about this, Gary. You probably do because it's always on YouTube.
I don't.
There is a real life business about renting people or renting families, renting friends, even renting girlfriends. And it stems from like the Japanese culture. Now, once again, this is my white guy splaining alert, but it has a cultural issue with saving face. So even though everybody knows that it's not true, saving face is more important. So they would rather keep up appearances than be open about their lives in the culture of Japan. And this is very true. And it's been like this for a long time. Historically, you can like get surrogates to take places of like family members. If like you're going to a funeral or going to a wedding, you can surrogates for that. And rental families, you can rent a whole family. They're often used for weddings, loneliness, supporting the elderly, other events where people would be sad.
I'm reminded of How I Met Your Mother, where Barney doesn't want to disappoint his mother, so he hires actors to play his wife and his children.
Yeah. It's essentially
Tyler no likey.
And also in another important case, because I saw this with Elliot Page's documentary that they have on Hulu, is this idea of coming out to your parents. So sometimes they're scared in the closet and they want to come out to their parents, and they don't want to do it with their boyfriend around because they don't know, or girlfriend, or whoever their same-sex partner is, I can't have that person there. I don't want them to think badly of them. But if I'm surrounded by friends and showing that my life's good and that I'm not being shunned by society. And I saw there's this one time where this one gentleman was going to come out to his mom, rented a friend to come out. And it was really fascinating because the mom left. She was so upset that her son came out. And then the rent-a-friend went outside, talked to the mother, and the mother came back and said, "I'm sorry, I overstepped my bounds, and I'm just really happy that my son has found good friends in his life that's willing to support him in this time." So you're like, whoa, this is like some really heavy stuff.
That deserved a big tip.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm like, oh, so I see the purpose of it. Like, it fills, we're social beings, so like there is a need for social companionship, whether that be sexual, whether that be romantic, whether that be friends, whether it be family. And for the elderly, it might actually be a good option if you're feeling lonely. So,
yeah.
And also another subtext of this all is that Japan has a really terrible connection between work-life balance.
Right.
You're working all day. And so there's a larger growing set of men, specifically because salary men are the large percentage of the people that do that work, are dealing with loneliness, and they've given up on the idea of ever finding someone. They're like, this is my life. I'm going to die at my desk.
If they didn't lock in a wife when they were young.
Right. They're like, this is it for me. This is my life from now on. And so this becomes a viable option. And you know what? In my mind, I don't think that's an issue. It's, and it's not exclusively Japanese. It happens in other Asian countries, like I think in Philippines or Vietnam. I forgot which Southeast Asian country it was, but you actually pay for people to mourn your lost one. And they like to cry about it and scream about how you're going to miss them and stuff like that. Like, it's a real thing. So
that's a bit much because you're not even there.
But it is a real thing, and there is cultural competency. So I wanted to make sure I give this an option. This is not like a weird concept that just anime thought up for no reason. This
right. It's far more. In fact, it's probably the idea is far more, if not normal, familiar to Japanese audiences.
Right. Exactly. So before we go even more to the show, what I wanted to do was actually list line item by line item what Kazuya actually spent in his just in the first 6 episodes that we had.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of rough out the rest of the story because I think the rest of the story is pretty interesting. The next 4 episodes after this.
Yeah.
So Chizuhara's going rate is 5,000 yen an hour. Easy translation for that roughly is you just take away two zeros, and that's what it is in dollars. So 5,000 yen is $50. Okay, so if you're going to do that math in your head, just do the combination of those two things, right? So episode 1, Kazuya had 2 dates. All right, he had I actually saw him physically hand her money, so I actually had an idea how long he was there. He did 30,000 yen a date for 2 dates, so that's roughly $600 for those 2 dates. $600 for those 2 dates. And then the extra time that he went to the hospital with his grandma, I'm going to assume an hour or 2. So that's $700 for the first episode that this man has spent.
Right.
Isn't that wild? So, like, this is an expensive harem to get, right?
Right.
The second thing is He advances $300 for a visit to his grandmother because the foil of the show is that she's going to stay with him, especially when he visits his grandma, so that she can keep the ruse up until she passes. Because I guess the understanding is that she's not long for this
muster up the courage to tell her.
Right. So the idea is like, I'll keep the ruse on for a little bit and I'll pay you each time. So he advances her $300 for the visit and then spends another assumed 2 hours at the bar because his friend pulls him out while she's trying to leave. And to keep the ruse up, he stayed with her 2 hours in the bar. So I actually saw the receipt at the end of this episode. It was $170 for the whole day. So now we're at, I don't know, this $870 so far this man has spent in 2 episodes. Then we get to the beach episodes, which Garrett and I will go over in a minute because it's an important foil.
Yep.
He spends, I'm going to assume 2 hours because she wasn't supposed to be on a date with him, but it ends up being her being pulled into it. I'm going to assume 2 hours.
Yep.
So each at $50 an hour, so
$970.
Yeah, so that's $100. Episode 6, she itemized. So then I don't think he charges her in episode 4 or 5 because like it's an extension of the beach episode followed by things that she wasn't paying for. Like they went to a hotel that he didn't pay her for. So that's nothing. And then episode 6, he itemizes 2 hours plus, and then this is even funnier. The receipt gave the full thing. It's like $100 for travel limits, $20 for food and beverage, $9 for the location fee for a total of $179 for that tax. In the course of 6 episodes, this man has paid a total of $1,467 for this one woman's attention.
And he's a first-year college student.
Right, and you see his dad goes, I'm going to give you just this amount of money, and I'm not giving you any more after this.
And he goes, what are you, stupid? You think I'm going to do anything? I'm at college to study. Did you happen to catch, because it was written down, what does his dad give him, like $100,000? No, what did his dad give him? $1 million?
I think he gave him about $85,000 is what it looked like he gave him from what I saw.
$85,000?
Yeah. But that's like you got to think about college, how much a year of college cost, how much room and board is going to be, how much food for a year is going to be. That's generally going to be it. So that's what I think at least. But so the next foil that we're going to talk about is that you meet his ex-girlfriend kind of keeps bumping into his life, and we need to talk about her a little bit.
Right. So, as you mentioned before, they're out on the street, and the date's about to end, and he runs into 2 of his friends.
Yes.
One of them is named Kibe, and he's kind of like a decent-look dude, dark hair.
Holy cool dude.
And the other one is some buck-tooth glasses.
Like what you would assume like a comedy show would say a dork is in real life.
Right. And so they're like, you got to come have drinks with us. You got to come have drinks with us. Come on. And instead of being normal and being like, oh, no, my girl, she's got to run, whatever. He's like, let's do it. Because he always makes the wrong decision.
Yes. Rule 1 of Rent a Girlfriend. Kazuya always makes a bad decision. He always makes things worse for Kazuya.
So they get to the bar, and as I mentioned, it's sort of like a booth that they have these like shades.
Right.
Pull the shade back, and who's there? Effing Mami-san.
Mami, no. Rub. Sorry.
And that's his ex. Now, we saw his ex back in episode 1.
Yeah.
On campus. She has decided that he does not exist.
Yes.
But in true young person BS social interacting,
right,
he's now showed up with a hottie with a body.
Right. And she is green with envy.
Right, because her eyes are freaking crazy.
Okay, so here's an anime trope that I hope you're noticing. Like, I get scared of the trope in which like a girl's like really nice, but then like her bangs go down and you don't see her eyeballs anymore, but and like the shadow of her bangs is covering her eyes to make her like super ominous. So like
she becomes like the secretive Nim, like
yes, because Chizuru is really a tsundere in real life. She's a tsundere. She's the I'm better than you. What do you think you're doing? Kind of person. And it looks like Mami's kind of a secret yandere. Like romance is not a thing for her. It's like destroying men is her. Like she's the classic man-eater character.
Yes.
And she kind of gives instances to it. Like when she's texting people, she's like. The friend's like, oh, did you see her with this like hot girl? He's like, I hope he dies in hell, and I hope like sharks eat his innards. And you're like, whoa! He's fine.
So in this second episode, I'll just end it briefly so we can hop into the beach arc.
Right, exactly.
But in the second episode, he's now forcing Mizuhara to sit at a table and with his ex in this hyper awkward situation, and his ex is down at the far end of the table. But guess what? She's a pro. She's legit. She is. When we do the waifu list, she's up there with Busujima.
Really? Okay. I'm gonna put that on the notes. Garrett's waifu list is gonna have Mizuhara on there. Good.
So he goes to the bathroom to, once you're drinking beer, it comes out the bottom end, and he comes back, and Mami has situated herself across from Kazuya and Mizuhara, and she starts negging the hell out of him.
It was worst.
So weird. Didn't he used to stare at me? He'd
want to touch my hand all the time.
Oh, he asked for he got a kiss, and then he wanted a kiss every time. And just really, and Mizuhara, because she's a
pro. She is a ride or die.
She stands up and goes, "No, you will not talk about my man. You are being out of line. Screw you."
And you would think, Kazuya, this is your chance. She's setting you up for a real strange pose. And what does he do?
And he stands up and he's trembling and he goes, "That's just the way I am."
What a beta. No, I was kidding. I don't like using words like that, but it's true. Like, the pros set you up to look. What a baka. What a real baka. And I agree with you. It's like, at no point did I like this guy. And then she leaves because, like, why would she stick around now at that point? Like, she's been a professional. She did enough. She's not even, like, on the clock, technically. She's going to charge her, but she's like, there's nothing saying that she's prepaid for. That means she has to stay there. Right. So she's left. And now Mami takes this opportunity to start pulling on his channel a little bit some more. He walks him home drunk. And then Kazuya once again, he's like, oh, you shouldn't have left me. And he starts like getting all weird about it. And Mami's like, "You're funny. Bye."
Right. And then he gets home, and throughout this, we mentioned not only does he find out he goes to the same college as Mizuhara, but they live in apartments next to one another.
Right next to each other. So now we're in the classic trope of, like, you can't get away from this person.
So he gets home, and she's like, "Don't worry. You didn't do anything wrong. I understand she's your ex-girlfriend." I mean, how cool. But anyway, so
she was not being paid to say that either.
So now we've introduced Mami to the mix, and because she's a man-eater and because she lives to make trouble, we're brought to the next episode where Mizuhara is not supposed to be around because it would have been really expensive to hire her.
Yes.
But Kazuya gets invited to go away for a weekend with his friends to the beach. And when he shows up to get in the car, there's Mami in the backseat. And so he's like, well, let's see how this goes. And
I have my thoughts about Mami. She is not a good person either in any way, shape, or form. But this beach episode, I think, deserves something. In the spirit of true patriotism in America, Garrett, I want us to stand and salute the best anime bikini we've ever seen in the history of anime, because she wears an American flag, like F yeah bikini, to the beach. This woman is like, it seems like she micromanages her entire life to the point where she's able to kind of do that.
Right.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's going to be on Reddit somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they go on like this. This has gotten to a really interesting thing for me because, like, you're like me. You recognize what the beach episode's for. It's to get all the anime characters in bikinis. It's to be like, what would this character that you like look like with less clothes on? That's the general idea. And for the most part, that's what happens. But Chizuru is now off the clock, and she's in her, first half of She's All That mode. And
so they go to the beach, and she's not supposed to be on the
Not supposed to be on the beach. Yeah.
Not supposed to be around.
And she just shows up. And now everybody sees Ichinose, which is Chizuru with glasses. Garrett, if you ever came in with your hair down and glasses on, I would still know you're Garrett.
And everyone just like, who's this
this weird girl? Sure, I've seen you around campus before. It's like,
at least Kazuya in his head calls him out for being idiots.
Right, and mind you, this is a woman that the grandma calls a Class S hottie. You don't forget Class S hotties.
And for those at home who are not familiar with this nomenclature, as I'm starting to learn, you got D, C, B, A.
Those women are kind of hot.
A.
Women are hot at A, but then you get the S, Garrett. And S is like, that's top tier. That's special class right there.
So I understand that what they're doing is more innocent, but the only way I can liken this to is and there is nothing wrong with what I'm about to say.
Right.
But imagine you were a young student and you went to college and you were short on cash. And the only way that you could make money quickly and in the time that you needed to was to be a stripper. Mm-hmm. Rule number 1 would be you would not strip within a certain radius of your college because you just don't want to run into classmates. You don't want people to mess with your life because your private life is separate from that and it's nobody else's business. So her thing is she tries to do things away from the college because she doesn't need people in her everyday life to know, be concerned, care, judge, whatever. She doesn't need it. So that's where her attitude comes from. You better not tell anyone. Right.
And so then all of a sudden, Mami smells blood in the water, goes to follow Kazuya-kun around. And he throws Chizuru in the bathroom because they don't want to see each other talking to each other. And she goes into the bathroom and she looks at it, he comes out and he's like, oh God, and my ruse is ruined. Why would I be in the bathroom with this Ichinose girl? And then she comes out as our girl, Chizuhara. She comes out in her rent-a-girlfriend gear and she's like, oh, you caught me, tee-hee, all that stuff. And does a really good job of it. And then Mami is incensed. How dare this man know? Incensed. So she does a trick in the beach episode the next episode where she pretends to lose her bracelet.
Around the rock
so that she can be like, oh, where is it? Oh, I fell into you, that kind of thing, and then smooches him. Really, she's a real piece of garbage, this woman.
Right. And but while they're smooching, it has one of those sensual sequences, and it got real rapey.
Yeah.
It did. Kazuya is like, I get it. She's a pretty girl. She's in a bikini. She's brushed up against you. But all of a sudden, he's like, Argh!
Yeah, he's like. So he is. So to Chizuhara, this is a client, right? So if I went up and said, "Well, I might get back to my girlfriend. Isn't that nice?" Chizuhara's okay with that. So all of a sudden, he wants to now be like, "Oh, well, Mami now seems interested in me," and be like, "I now have to tell you, I broke up with my girlfriend. What a shame!" And then they're like incensed by that fact too.
Right. So again, makes the wrong decision.
Wrong decision. This could have happened not as an announcement at the dinner table.
Well, right. And again, because she's a pro, Mizuhara is like, no, it's fine. And then his buddy Kibe effing punches him. A haymaker. And you can just imagine youthful testosterone and youthful anger, and you probably used to horseplay with your friends tougher than you really should have, and they're in a freaking fist fight on the beach.
Yeah.
And Kibe gets up and he's like, dude, you are a moron.
And I think he's completely not only right about that.
Yeah, he's like,
a real effing moron.
How could you ever pretend to be with anyone or think that you could date anyone if you can't give your full self to the person that you're with at that time?
Right, exactly.
And if you have any sense at all, you will work it out with Mizuhara because she's
Stop
the best
being
thing
a flake.
That's ever happened to you.
Right, stop being a flake. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know. And my favorite part of this whole interaction, and I actually was really surprised by this, is that he looks at Mami and he goes, "Hey man, I need you to stop messing with my best friend, and I need you to stop, letting people on if you're not interested in them. So knock it off." And I was like,
yeah.
I was like, that's a real thing someone should say in this interaction. I was like,
yeah.
For a character that's not drawn specially, for a character that is not given a real character arc, he's kind of like the friend that goes like, "Oh, what'd you do with this girl?" Like that's his role. At that moment, I'm like, "You're my favorite character. I like this guy." Because it's true. Like if someone was messing my friend, I would easily be like, "Stop messing with my friend. Stop being a jerk about it." Right? If you're interested, fine. But if you're not, stop leading him on. Like he's entitled to having emotions too. So stop messing with them if you're going to do that to him. So And once again, Kazuya's in like harem MC mode, and he's like, "Oh, if they only knew, this is just a misunderstanding," because that's always what it is. It's always a misunderstanding. But once again, Shizuhara, after being this woman has been twice embarrassed in front of this man's friends, like in truly humiliating scenarios. She's like, "Okay, you paid for what you paid for me. I'm going to give you my all, and then so if you need, just hit the submit button, and I'm good to go." So she's ROD, that girl. She's awesome. So
right. So she goes to leave, and she goes to get back her stuff, and Kibe finds her.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I need to talk to you." He goes, "Let's cut the crap." Kazuya he's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells this really sort of sweet story about Kazuya's never-ending hope. And even when it seems like he's the biggest idiot in the world, and he should just give up and accept reality, he has this spirit that won't let him give up on it, which I'm really glad his friend is telling the story, because up until this point, he seems like a real dolt.
Yeah, he seems like a real, like an unredeemable beehole. That's what I think about him.
But he's just like, if he was an idiot, he's probably not going to stop being an idiot, but all of his other qualities really like make up for it. And I bought you 2 ferry tickets so that you can ride back from the beach to the hotel or the mainland together. And I think you should take it.
Right.
And of course he gives this in classic fashion. Kazuya is hiding in the bushes behind them, and he overhears them, and he gets caught. And they could have made it so awkward. I'm glad they didn't make it more awkward than it was.
No.
But Mizuhara and Kazuya decide to go back on the ferry together.
Because here's the thing, they're both like broke AF. This man is spending like pretty much all of his money on girlfriends, and she's got to do this job because I don't know how well she's supported. So
now that being said, I started to hypothesize when she admits to him, like, I'm really like, I'm having a hard month. She's got 5 stars all over the place.
Yeah.
I started to hypothesize in my head that she was working less because her heart wasn't in it.
Right.
Because maybe she was being drawn to Kazuya and sort of put the kibosh on her regularly scheduled program. But anyway,
that's a good foresight.
So they're heading back on the ferry, and she's suffering clearly from some sort of motion sickness.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to comfort her, let's go inside, whatever. And then he gets a phone call from Mami, and she's like, "Where are you?" "I'm in the pool all by myself." and she's like, "Why don't you come back?" And he's like, "Oh, haha." And while he's on the phone with her and he's making these plans, he's like, "Yeah, 15 minutes. Give me 15 minutes." Because like an idiot, instead of trying to see if Mizuhara might have feelings for him, which I also kind of get, because in the beginning he was like, it's real. And she has made it apparent time after time.
The answer's no, yeah.
And the answer is no, it's not real. You're paying me. So I guess it is kind of unfair of him to expect that it's a lie and she might actually have feelings.
Here's the thing, though. What is in his head is generally good thinking about it, because it's the part of his conscience going like, stop being an idiot, don't say something. Inside his head, there's like a good gatekeeper. His mouth is not there, though.
Yeah.
And he'll say like, "Oh, but I like Mami, and I appreciate you doing it." And like, and then he's like, I'm gonna go see Mami now. And apparently she has like the worst heat exhaustion I've ever seen a human being have, because she decides now's a good time to walk towards the edge of the ferry.
Right. And she faints and she falls over the edge of the ferry, and they're screaming, "Oh my," which, by the way, it was so descriptive, because he hears the commotion and some guy goes, "Oh my God, it was the girl in the white shirt and the orange blouse. Like,
she was an S-class hottie. Get her now."
Right.
They're a life preserver. She's S-class.
So, without thinking, Kazuya drops his phone. You see it crack on the ground, and he leaps off the side of the boat, and he swims down and down and down, and he gets her, and he rescues her, and he brings her to this little sandbar, and she comes to on the sandbar, And she's like, oh my God, why did he come after me? Why did he try and save me? This guy's so stupid. Why did he risk his life for me? He's just a client. And next thing she realizes is he's not breathing. And she tries to pump his chest and he's not coming to. And he's like, well, like you see a vision inside his head. And he's like, well, this was it. What a way to go. That was nice. And she's like, all right, I got to do CPR. And they go mouth to mouth.
He does like a Wendy Peppercorn, you know?
Yes,
like the whole,
true Sandlot Wendy Peppercorn.
I think he honestly like throws up in her mouth almost. Like he's like and
right, because unlike Wendy Peppercorn, where Squints was faking it, he was legitimately
drowning. And here's another thing there's two things I thought from this. The first is a constant anime trope is that when someone's drowning, two things happen. One is someone is like the weight of a lead balloon and will sink.
Yes.
It's not like a person like if I'm unconscious, most likely I'll float because all my air is in my chest cavity.
Right.
That's the first thing. And I'm like, everybody's always sinking like a lead balloon. The second thing is every body of water that someone's trying to save someone is the Marianas Trench. There is no bottom to these. Like, if you ever look at anime, they don't even bother showing the bottom of the water. It's just this giant abyss. Right. Like, they were in a ferry, mind you. Ferries don't generally go that in deep of water. Right. Like, and she's like sinking, just like, and he just keeps diving for it. That was the first thing. The second thing is, rental or not, I'm not going to let you die. Like, if you go through this thing and you're sinking, you're drowning, right. I'm not going to be like, well, I'm not on the clock, so I'm not going to save this girl. Like, that's a silly idea. Why would he save me? I'm not a human being unless you're paying for me. Like, so, come on. And so we're starting to see the phrase that start to end up on her emotions. She's starting to crack the exterior. Once again, this is tsundere, right? She's a secret tsundere. We're trying to get to that gooey middle to get to the story. And, you know, everything's good. Kazuya is now in the idea of, this is the most, normally, Garrett, let me pause for a quick second. Normally in harem anime, there's the aha moment where the one you've wanted all along is obvious to you. And you're going, oh, I should have been with the tsundere this whole time. Right. Come back to me, tsundere. Like, that's usually what happens in these things. And in episode 5, we get to it, but it's the most awkward aha moment I've seen. This man is thinking of Mami, and he is yanking his chain so vigorously.
Because one of his buddies sent him photos from the beach.
Yes, with that bikini, with an American bikini.
Whatever gets you going, but he's spanking it, and
he's playing with his nipples. It was the most descriptive way to show a man whacking off ever. And this man is trying to whack it, but then in the process of trying. In the process, though, he's getting Chizuhara going, I want to help you out, my friend. And it's like distracting you. It's like a very obvious thing that happens to anybody in the world that's like masturbating. They're like, oh man, I know what I really want to think about, but oh God, why is this person all of a sudden in my mental image of it? And it just was that interaction of like, but Mami's hot, but Chizuhara really cares about me, but Mami's hot. But all in the process of this like extended awkward wank sesh. And it's when he feels really bad about it, the moment where the light bulb goes off, instead of seeing a literal light bulb, you see his wadded tissue paper on the table, and he's like, oh, I like Chizuhara.
Which, if we're being honest, the moment you would see that wadded tissue, what would really be going on his mind is
I want to go to sleep.
I'm tired and absolutely nothing.
You don't get any clarity at that moment, my friend. You usually get a lot of shame and a lot of I want to go to sleep.
Right. So,
but the fact that it was like this perfectly like as if you know how like some magic tricks that tell you to put a cup into a tissue paper and then you remove the cup and it still keeps the shape and you go like and like it to make it look like the cup disappeared. It's like that, but like it's like this like mushroom shaped tissue with like little frames coming out. I'm like, why did you do this, guys? Come on.
We're not even to, in my opinion, the weirdest part of the show either.
All right, because like I think you need to go for it, man, because we're gonna get to the final episode.
So in episodes 5 and 6, we move away from the beach,
right?
And we see that Gran, Kazuya's grandma, has gotten out of the hospital, which is great news. But it kind of means that plans need to come to an end with with Mizuhara. And Gran wants to go on this weekend getaway. I want to go to the spa in the mountains and enjoy myself, and you're going to come with me. And he's like, cool, great, anything for you, Gran. And he shows up, and it turns out that Gran is going on this trip with Mizuhara's grandma. And they're like, oh, how are you and Mizuhara? He's like, and they're like, oh, did you do it yet? And he's like, what? and both of these grandmas really want these two youngins to like get it on.
Right.
But Gran basically says, hey, I only had enough money to book one deluxe room, so you beat it to this other room.
Not telling that Mizuhara is there. Not telling him at all. So.
Well, right, and he shows up, and the door is unlocked, and he goes inside, and like there's like food on the counter. He's like, oh, get it together, housekeeping. And you hear noise, and out of the bathroom in her robe comes Mizuhara, and he's like, oh! And she's like, how did you get it in here? Oh!
Yeah.
And so it turns out, she's like, don't you understand? This has been the ultimate setup. Our grandmothers have brought us here. And so she runs to go confront them. And they do this thing where she gets to the elevator and he goes to go in, and she turns into a cat
with like a one claw at her tip going, you take the stairs. So that's a really good point. I'll let you finish this point because I have some that gives me some thoughts on this. But go ahead, man.
Right. So they go and confront the grandmas, and they're like, hey, it really would be a hassle to the hotel staff because we've scheduled all of our meals, so you guys got to hang out in that room. And Mizuhara is like steamed, but she decides, I'm not gonna let this ruin my time, so I'm gonna go to the baths. So this is where we get to what I think is like the most awkward scene in the first 6 episodes. Is she gets to the baths, and Gran, Kazuya's grandma, is there, and she's like, oh, is this one of those fantasies?
No, it's called the lucky lecture trope, which I think is true. There is the lucky lecture trope, which is the guy constantly bumping into terrible situations.
Right. So and then she's like, oh, ha ha ha, I guess that only happens with the opposite sexes.
Yeah.
So they're like bathing, and again, I know this is not our culture, and I know that this is not super uncommon, but
especially with women, you
can't reach your own back.
Yeah.
So hey, if someone's gonna wash your back, that's fine. So at one point, Mizuhara sits on her stool, and Gran is like washing her back, and she's telling her, I'm so happy that you're going to be my future daughter-in-law. No pressure, you're so wonderful. And she's like, oh, I'm not that great. And she's like, are you kidding me? And so she reaches from behind and she grabs her breast, and she's like, are you kidding me with these perfect breasts? And Mizuhara starts blushing, and then she puts her toweled hand between her legs, and she goes, I'm going to wash you inside and out. And I'm like, oh!
There's a dude that pays OnlyFans for that to happen. I promise you. No, but I agree. And so here's the thing, you're probably thinking to yourself, Kyle, you guys do harem anime all the time. What's this that makes this different than other ones that I might be watching? First is that it's a slice of life harem, which is cool. But also, there's some really cool, you mentioned the cat claws one, is they have really cool things that I like. There's 3 things that I put to note in my mind that was really interesting. The first was that when people are they're not afraid to make people look weird for the sake of being exacerbated. Because usually when you have the exacerbation, you have the boo cue. But when they're really really messed up, or someone says really bad, they turn to Saitama for One Piece, and they're like, is my favorite. The second thing is they also have they do what I like what they do in manga, which is they do little explainer cues on the side, this guy's a loser. Oh man, he's really dreading this, and they do that in manga. But the fact that they did that in this anime was really fun.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, which I thought was funny as all hell, was he was like, well, we're going to be in the same room together. That's so cool, but I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to be a respectable man. And he turns around, and it shows you the input code for Street Fighter's kick, Setsumaki Senpu Kyaku, and she just straight up dragon kicks him right in the gut, and it shows you the input of it, down forward kick. And she's like, oh!
He's like, why did you do that? And she's like, you know how you were looking at me.
So those are some things that it has really good, I like that it does the manga in the touch. It's not afraid to use different art styles. It's It also does really fun inside pop culture jokes, which I think is really funny.
Right.
But the final thing that I want to talk about this show before we go into like the final ratings is the Tale of Two Musics, the Tale of Two theme songs.
Okay.
The first theme song, all respect to build castles in the sky for our theme song. I love it, but I want to replace it with the theme song to this show. I love the theme song to this show. It's so good. So I'm going to play that right now, just so I can let it play a little bit. Such a good song, and it's really fun because like usually when you listen to romance and things that have like a lot of harem, to like emphasize all of the kind of erratic nature of the show in which you're like constantly getting women thrown at you all the time. The theme songs are usually what you get at the ending, which sounds like Now, which is just this erratic mess of a song. It's like, now we're doing cymbals, and a tambourine, different key change, now we're doing a different time.
Right.
It does that, and I'm always like, whoa, I'm almost getting a headache when I listen to some of these like romance anime things, because they're all over the place. So, I don't know, did you see that? Did you have any thoughts about the theme songs?
I did not have many thoughts on the ending theme song. To be honest,
they're like cheerleading him, shaking the soda can, which was
I might have listened to it once. I kept fast forwarding through. The opening theme song I did enjoy.
I did enjoy it a lot, and I think it's like of all the like intro theme songs, especially for romance and harem, it's the top one I think in terms of harem. So, and I also appreciate it's like an all girl punk band that's like. Yep. They're not doing like obvious like koi koi pew pew. They're not doing any of that stuff. So anytime you get to avoid that in the romance show, I'm always for that. So finally, Garrett, we get to what we always do in the show, is what I like to call the Weeb and Noob score. Now, the Weeb and Noob score does not mean it's good or bad, because I like the show. I hope you did too, Garrett. But the Weeb and Noob score pretty much is how emphatic we are about the show in terms of whether or not you should watch it. I'm trying to find new ways to get people to get it. It's like, it's not whether it's good or bad. It's like, how soon should you get to it? How much are we putting our names behind it? It's like, should you watch it or should you really watch it? That's the kind of idea that we want you to get to. And since I had you do it last week, I'll start with this one. I honestly give this for a harem because of its realisticness, and I kind of like slice of life. I give it in, especially as I'm older, an 8.5. Now, that's a pretty high score. You're probably thinking that's a pretty high score. As weebs, we tend to have a pretty nutrient-dense diet with a lot of like lore. Like if you watch Bleach, you want to know every sword name, you want to know every character's name, you want to know their backstory, their blood type. Sometimes it's nice to have a slice of life anime in your docket, in your pocket, something that you can. That's not going to be too stressful. That's not going to have. And this show is very realistic with how things go bad. And at no point am I like, oh, it's just another anime, main character who's dumb and bland and all that stuff. He's flawed. The heroine's not dopey and like has no self-worth. So subverting that a little bit, I'm sure there's other shows that do, but like I liked it as an adult. I appreciate it more, and as a fan of the genre, it might be something to keep in your. So I would watch this over something like Nisekoi. In fact, I actually would say, if this is, I would compare this like a lot to Nisekoi or Yamada-kun. Like if you like that style of harem, that's like, but the main character is kind of a vanilla snow cone, then go for that. But I think this does a little bit more. And the fact that it's new, the animation's good. Yeah, it's new. Everything's crisp and clean. So, and I like the little touches and flares it adds. So I'm going to give it an 8.5. Garrett, what do you give it for your noob score?
7.5.
Okay, not bad.
Incredibly solid. And if you were going to like, I watched it on my computer, on my laptop, on my lap, on my couch with my wife next to me. And because you'd kind of give me like a heads up of ecchi, like I kind of like turned the computer so that like only I was watching it. But there was never a need to do that. Like, yeah, there's a few scenes where he's like fantasizing, but I think it was like, it was ecchi, but it was measured in just the right way.
And it wasn't happening in real life. It wasn't echiness happening in real life. Yep. It was ecchi happening in the brain of a hormonal guy.
And you always decry like the whole I fell and I'm on you, but this show did it with like a purpose. And just I think that they did a lot of things well. And as I said at the top of the show, I was super impressed with like the realistic reactions and relationship amongst the characters. So it's not going to get in the 8.5s and the 9.5s and 9s for me, where like some of like, in my opinion, some of these more legendary pieces are. I know I should treat it separately and say within the world of harem or ecchi, where does it belong? But I think
as a new fan, you don't have to do that though. In my mind, Noob pays off to do that. Yeah.
7.5 was is a super respectable score, and I think it's something you should watch.
Now, this is the final question before the end of the show: is will you keep watching? Knowing that it's a 7.5, pretty pedestrian, would you keep watching?
I will watch to. I would watch to 12.
There's only one season right now, up to 12 episodes, just so you know.
Okay, so I would finish watching, but here's my issue because I'm torn. I need to see some growth,
right?
More growth between Mizuhara and Kazuya.
Right.
Now, remember the TV show Frasier,
right?
The entire show was the sexual tension between Frasier's brother Niles and his home assistant maid Daphne. Okay, and they kept the tension, and the show was really funny for like 4, 5, 6 years. But eventually, they had to let them get together. Yeah. And then there was no reason to watch anymore because you were watching for the tension. So I'm really torn because I think I just want to see her give him an inch to the point where maybe he starts standing up for himself a little bit. Maybe she doesn't give in and date him, but maybe, you know what? Even if she doesn't open up to him, if he started to show growth and be a little more confident and a little less piece of crap, I would
might like him a little bit more. I agree, because I right now at this point I'm not rooting for Kazuya. And in fact, if Chizuru graduates college and never dates another person after this show and just does her job, I think that's a very sufficient ending to this story. And
or what if Kibe punches him and dates Mizuhara?
I would root for Kibe. Let's say let's watch that spin-off. It's like let's get the side characters some love here.
Oh, we almost forgot. The biggest thing, we're circling back, ladies and gentlemen. We're circling back to the end of episode 6. Yes, don't edit this, homeboy, because this is important. Yeah. And this sort of sets the tone for where the second half of the first season is going to go.
Yeah.
In episode 6, remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we talked about his bucktooth, really nerdy friend.
Yeah.
Somehow he gets a girlfriend, and this girlfriend and this girlfriend and he invite Kazuya and Mizuhara to go free climbing or indoor rock climbing.
Yeah.
And this girl, Ruka, calls out Mizuhara and says, "You're a rent-a-girlfriend, aren't you?" And she and the episode is her trying to play it off and blah blah blah. Now my theory about this is Ruka is also a rent-a-girlfriend.
That's my theory too, and my theory is that she's going to join the harem, because if you watch the theme song, it really gives it away. Like, Ruka's in the theme song. There's this other really shy girl that's in there that's also in the harem. So it might be a harem of 4 girls from what I'm seeing from the theme song, at least in the
all for Kazuya.
All for Kazuya. Well, that's the harem. It's a harem. Like, I don't want to pretend this is not a harem show. It still is.
All right.
It's just a little bit more realistic. They're not giving you 19 girls all loving one guy. It's like realistically 4 girls, 2 really that you're thinking about. Mami really doesn't care. So like it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's still harem. So just understand what it is.
Yeah. But I think she's another. I think it's pretty obvious. That
I think it's pretty obvious too.
Because the dorky friend was not going to pull that kind of girl.
And there's if you didn't know that this service exists, there's no reason for a woman to know that this service exists, in my mind.
Right.
So, Garrett, unfortunately, your time's up with me.
Okay.
You've only given me a certain amount of yen, so unfortunately, I have to move on to my next client and really wish for your thoughts. Was Rent-a-Girlfriend this new harem genre with a little slice of life, the kind of break you needed from the stressfulness of 2020? Did it have a little bit of heartfeltness, or did you really hate Kazuya? Because some of us kind of did. Let us know in the comments below, because we really, really want to get your opinions on it. Tell us what you thought about the show, especially with new properties coming out. It's good that we get to kind of catch up with what's happening now. You can follow us on anchor.fm/wanwapodcast for the audio, or anywhere your podcast is found. Please, please, please give us a high review, because it allows people to see the show. Finally, you can follow us on social media at Instagram at wanwapodcast. That's WANWA. And finally, you can also find us on Twitter at @weeb_new. But before we end the show, Garrett, what are some final thoughts you have on Rent-a-Girlfriend?
Guys, gals, do not leave your wadded tissues on the floor or even in the garbage. Flush, flush, flush. Keep it clean, remove the evidence.
So we're going to be happily looking over our profiles, going to find out the next Rent-a-Girlfriend, trying to see if they'll hold our hands, and wish you all a fantastic. See you next week.
Take care, y'all.
forget that I'm just a rental girlfriend. Hell could freeze over and I still wouldn't be yours for real. Got it? Chizuru? Huh?